I found out my husband was getting married again because I drove him there. I didn't recognize him at first. It was a Tuesday afternoon in late March. Gray sky, light rain. The kind of day where people tip badly and complain about traffic. I'd been driving my taxi since 5 that morning. 12 hours broken by coffee and school pickup calls from my daughter's sitter. When the request came through the app, I accepted it without looking too closely. Pickup location: Harborview Plaza Hotel. Destination: St. Agnes Catholic Church. He opened the back door and said my name, Claire. Not loudly, not gently, just enough to test whether I was real. I looked at him through the rearview mirror and felt something inside me go quiet. Not pain, not shock. Silence. Like a switch being turned off. It was Daniel Brooks, my husband of 8 years. The man who left me and our 5-year-old daughter 18 months ago. The man who told me he needed space and then stopped sending child support 3 months later. The man who married my best friend today. Before I go any further, if stories about betrayal, family drama, and quiet revenge resonate with you, like this video, leave a comment, and subscribe. This is not a fast story. It's a true one, and it ends very differently than it begins. Daniel adjusted his suit jacket, still sitting in my back seat like I was a stranger with a steering wheel. Navy blue, tailored, expensive. He smelled like cologne I used to buy him for Christmas. "Are you driving taxis now?" he asked. "Yes," I said. One word: neutral. He nodded, as if confirming something he'd already decided about me. "You look well," he said. I didn't answer. Outside the window, the city moved the way it always does. People late for things that matter to them. People carrying flowers. People with somewhere to go. Daniel cleared his throat. "I didn't know you were still in the city." "I didn't know you were getting married today," I said. Silence filled the car, thick and awkward. Then he laughed softly. "Well," he said, "life moves on." That was the first lie he told me that day. My name is Claire Monroe. I'm 32 years old. I drive a taxi in Portland, Oregon. Not because I love driving, but because it's flexible enough to work around school hours, sick days, and a child who still wakes up at night after bad dreams. My daughter's name is Lily Brooks. She's 5. She knows her father lives somewhere else now. She does not know he's marrying Aunt Megan. Megan Collins was my best friend for 14 years. She stood next to me at my wedding. She held my hand when Lily was born. She cried in my kitchen when Daniel told me he felt trapped by responsibility. She also came from money. Real money. Her parents, Richard and Elaine Collins, owned a regional construction company. Lake houses, trust funds, connections. The kind of family that never worries about missing a payment. When Daniel left, he told me he needed to find himself. Megan told me she would always be on my side. 6 months later, she stopped answering my calls. Daniel shifted in the back seat as the church came into view. "You can drop me here," he said. I pulled over smoothly, parked, meter still running. Before he opened the door, he hesitated. "Claire," he said, "I hope you're doing okay." I turned around fully then, looked at him, really looked. "I am," I said. "Are you?" His mouth opened, then closed. He nodded once and stepped out into the rain. I watched him walk up the church steps, where Megan Collins was waiting in a white dress that probably cost more than my car. Her hair was perfect. Her parents stood behind her, smiling like this was always the plan. I drove away before they could see me. That night, I picked Lily up from my neighbor, Rosa Martinez, who watched her after school for $20 and leftovers. "How was your day, Mommy?" Rosa asked. "Long," I said. Lily ran to me, arms around my legs. "Mommy, can we have pancakes for dinner?" "Yes," I said. "We can have pancakes." After Lily fell asleep, I sat at the small kitchen table in our 1-bedroom apartment and opened the envelope that had been taped to my door earlier that day. I'd missed it when I left for work. Inside was a wedding announcement. Daniel Brooks and Megan Collins. Saturday. Private ceremony. Reception at Harborview Plaza Hotel. No return address. No note. Just confirmation. I stared at it until the edges blurred. Not because I wanted him back. Because they thought I was already gone. They thought I was invisible. What Daniel didn't know, sitting in my taxi that afternoon, was that driving strangers around a city teaches you things. You hear conversations people don't think matter. You learn routes, patterns, timelines. And what Megan didn't know was that when you strip a woman of comfort and push her into survival, you give her a very specific kind of focus. I folded the announcement carefully and placed it in a drawer next to Lily's birth certificate and my taxi license. I didn't cry. I made a plan. Because this wasn't just a wedding. It was a declaration, and I intended to answer it. The next morning, my phone rang at 6:12 a.m. The number belonged to someone I hadn't spoken to in years. And that was when things truly began to unravel. The number on my phone belonged to Megan Collins' mother. Elaine Collins had never called me directly before. In 14 years of friendship with her daughter, every message had come through Megan. Holiday invitations, thank you notes, even condolences when my father died had been filtered. Seeing Elaine's name on my screen at dawn felt deliberate. I answered on the third ring. "Claire," she said, her voice smooth, controlled. "I hope I didn't wake you." "I've been up," I replied. That wasn't a lie. Lily had crawled into my bed at 4:30, after a nightmare about monsters with too many eyes. "We wanted to let you know," Elaine continued, "that Daniel and Megan would appreciate discretion." I said nothing. "You work in a public-facing job now," she added, "and weddings can attract misunderstandings." There it was. Not a request. A warning. "I drove my husband to his wedding yesterday," I said. "I think misunderstandings are behind us." She paused, recalibrating. "Megan cares about you," Elaine said. "But this is a sensitive time. For everyone." "For everyone," I repeated. "Yes," she said. "Daniel is building a new life. Megan is joining him. It would be unfortunate if bitterness followed them." Bitterness. The word people use when they mean memory. "I haven't contacted anyone," I said. "I'm glad to hear that," Elaine replied. "Then we won't have any issues." She hung up without saying goodbye. I sat there for a long moment, phone in my hand, the apartment still quiet. Lily slept curled around her stuffed rabbit, her breath even. That was when I understood something important. They weren't afraid of me being emotional. They were afraid of me being factual. At 8:15 a.m., after dropping Lily at kindergarten, I logged into my driver account and went online. Morning commuters, airport runs, people who talk too much, or not at all. At 9:40, I picked up a man named Trevor Hale from the Pearl District. Mid-40s, wrinkled suit, Bluetooth earpiece still in. "Harborview Plaza," he said. "Ballroom entrance." I didn't react. Halfway there, he took a call. "No, Elaine," he said. "The documents were signed last week. The trust transfer is clean." My hands stayed steady on the wheel. "Yes," he continued. "Daniel Brooks is listed as spouse. Megan Collins waived individual ownership." I slowed slightly for traffic. "Of course," Trevor said. "Asset protection was the whole point." I dropped him off, smiled politely, and drove 3 blocks before pulling over. I wrote his name down. That afternoon, I picked up 2 women arguing quietly in the back seat. Wedding guests, judging by the garment bags. "She didn't even invite Claire," one whispered. "Why would she?" the other replied. Daniel said Claire was unstable, that she couldn't handle adult responsibility. I merged into traffic and let the conversation continue. "Still," the first woman said. "She raised their kid alone for a year." "People choose their paths," the second said. "Megan chose better." Better. That word again. I dropped them off and added another note to my phone. Not names this time, narratives. By the end of the day, I had driven 146 miles, earned $214 before gas, and learned more about Daniel and Megan's new life than they had ever intended me to know. They were moving into a house in Lake Oswego, purchased through a family trust. Megan's parents were helping Daniel reset. There was talk of a new job, a consulting role through one of Richard Collins's contacts, and Lily. There was no mention of Lily. That night, Lily asked if Daddy was coming to her school play next week. "I don't know," I said. "Does Aunt Megan know about my play?" she asked. I took a breath. "Not yet." She nodded, accepting that with the trust only children can manage. After she fell asleep, I opened my old email account, the one Daniel and I had used for shared bills before he left. I hadn't logged in since the divorce paperwork stalled 18 months ago. The password still worked. Inside were emails I'd forgotten. Messages Daniel sent to Megan late at night before he left. Subject lines that meant nothing then. "Can you talk? I can't do this anymore. I need someone who understands me. There were attachments, too. Drafts, budgets, a proposal Richard Collins had sent Daniel, outlining a transition plan, dated 3 weeks before Daniel moved out. I leaned back in my chair. The betrayal hadn't been sudden, it had been planned. And planning leaves paper. Over the next few days, small things escalated. Daniel missed another child support payment. The court notice I'd filed months ago resurfaced, suddenly active. Rosa mentioned that a woman had come by, asking questions about Lily. Tall, blonde, well-dressed. Megan, Rosa guessed. She said she was family. My chest tightened, but my voice stayed calm. She's not, I said. That night, I drafted a timeline. Not emotional. Clean. Dates, payments, emails, trust transfers, missed obligations. At the top of the page, I wrote one sentence. I will not beg for space in a story they erased me from. The next morning, as I pulled out of the apartment parking lot, my phone buzzed with a new ride request. Pickup, Collins Construction Office. Drop-off, Multnomah County Courthouse. The name attached to the request made my stomach settle into something solid. Richard Collins, Megan's father. I accepted the ride, not because I wanted answers, but because when people believe you're invisible, they talk freely. And I was ready to listen. As I drove toward the pickup location, rain starting again, I realized something else. They thought this was over. They thought the wedding closed the chapter. But weddings don't end stories. They trigger consequences. And this one had just set everything in motion. Richard Collins didn't recognize me. That was the first advantage. He stepped into the back seat carrying a leather briefcase, expensive coat folded neatly over his arm. Late 60s, upright posture. The kind of man who expected rooms to adjust to him. Courthouse, he said. Yes, sir, I replied. We pulled into traffic. Downtown Portland moved slowly, rain blurring the edges of buildings. He took a call almost immediately. Elaine, I'm on my way, he said. No, it's procedural. The trust filings just need confirmation. I kept my eyes on the road. Yes, Daniel's name is secure, Richard continued. That was the condition. He wouldn't commit otherwise. Condition. Secure. Commit. Words matter. I know Claire might complicate things, he said, lowering his voice. But she doesn't have the resources to fight this. I exhaled slowly through my nose. Child support, he scoffed softly. Daniel will handle that when he's stable. Courts understand transitions. He laughed then, quiet, confident. We've done this before. That was the sentence that stayed with me. When we reached the courthouse, Richard stepped out, paid through the app, and walked away without a glance back. I sat there for a full minute before pulling away, not shaking, not angry, focused. That afternoon, I didn't drive. I picked Lily up early and took her to the park. She ran, laughed, climbed things she shouldn't. I watched her closely, the way you do when you realize someone else has been watching too. Rosa's comment replayed in my head. Megan asking questions, presenting herself as family. That crossed a line. That evening, after Lily was asleep, I called the number on the child support notice. Legal aid. I'd avoided it before because I thought cooperation might still be possible. It wasn't. The woman who answered introduced herself as Naomi Turner. Her voice was direct, efficient. Miss Monroe, she said after reviewing my file. Your case was paused due to non-response from the other party. It can be reactivated immediately. What does that involve? I asked. Documentation, she replied. Payment history, income sources, and any third-party financial support. I thought of Richard's voice in my back seat. I have information, I said, about a family trust. There was a pause. Send everything you have, Naomi said, and don't warn anyone. That night, I opened my laptop and organized the emails I'd found. Screenshots, attachments, dates. I added notes from my driving shifts. Names, locations, conversations. Taxi driving had taught me something no office job ever could. People tell the truth when they think you're temporary. Over the next week, pressure built quietly. Daniel sent a text for the first time in months. We need to talk about Lily. I didn't respond immediately. Then another. Megan is worried about stability. Stability. I replied with one sentence. Court correspondence should go through my legal representative. He didn't answer. 2 days later, a letter arrived from a law firm representing the Collins family. Polite, firm, suggesting mediation, suggesting discretion, suggesting silence. Naomi reviewed it and smiled without humor. They're trying to control the venue, she said. That means they're concerned. About what? I asked. Exposure, she replied. The next escalation came from an unexpected place, Lily's school. The principal, a woman named Karen Whitfield, called me in for a meeting. There's been an inquiry, she said carefully, regarding guardianship. My stomach tightened, but my voice didn't change. From whom? I asked. Karen hesitated. From Megan Collins. She identified herself as family. I felt something harden inside me. She's not, I said, and she has no legal standing. Karen nodded. We verified that. But I wanted you to be aware. Thank you, I said, for telling me. That night, after Lily fell asleep, I sat in the dark and let the truth settle. They weren't just rewriting the past. They were preparing to rewrite the future. And they assumed I wouldn't notice until it was too late. The following Friday, Daniel showed up outside my apartment, unannounced. He stood near my car, hands in his pockets, looking uncomfortable. You didn't answer my messages, he said when I approached. I answered, through the appropriate channel, I replied. This doesn't have to get ugly, he said. It already is, I replied. Megan is just trying to help, he insisted. She thinks Lily would benefit from consistency. I stared at him. Do you know what consistency is? I asked. It's showing up, paying what you owe, not disappearing and then reappearing with lawyers. He flinched. You don't understand how much pressure I'm under, he said. I nodded. I do. How? He asked. Because I carry Lily's entire life on my back, I said. Every day, without backup. He looked away. My parents can make this easier, he said. If you cooperate. There it was again. Cooperate. I already am, I said. With the law. His face drained of color. You wouldn't, he said quietly. I met his eyes. You already did. He left without another word. That weekend, Naomi called. We've filed, she said. Support enforcement. Financial disclosure, third-party income consideration. What does that mean? I asked. It means the trust becomes relevant, she said. And so do the people funding Daniel's lifestyle. I closed my eyes, not in fear, in clarity. They had built a life on the assumption that I would stay quiet. That assumption was about to cost them far more than money. The next ride request came in Sunday night. Pickup, Lake Oswego. Drop-off, private residence. Name on the screen, Megan Collins. I accepted it. Not because I wanted confrontation, but because there are moments when listening becomes action, and this was one of them. As I drove toward Lake Oswego, headlights cutting through the dark, I understood something fully for the first time. This wasn't about revenge fueled by anger. It was about reclaiming reality. And once reality enters the room, even the richest stories collapse under their own weight. Megan Collins got into the back seat like she owned the car. That was the second advantage. She smelled like expensive perfume and rain. Her hair was pulled back loosely the way it used to be, when we stayed up late talking about futures that hadn't split yet. Hi, she said, then paused. Oh, recognition landed slowly on her face, followed by something tighter. Calculation. Claire, she said, I didn't realize you were driving tonight. I didn't realize you were calling a taxi, I replied. She laughed softly, too quickly. Daniel has the car. Long story. I pulled away from the curb. Lake Oswego at night looks like security and money agreeing with each other. Wide streets, no sidewalks where they aren't needed. Houses set back far enough to keep curiosity away. Megan watched the window for a moment before speaking. I heard you've been upset, she said. I kept my eyes on the road. I heard you asked Lily's school about guardianship, I replied. She stiffened. I was trying to help, she said. Daniel told me you were struggling. Daniel told you many things, I said. Silence stretched between us. She deserves stability, Megan said finally. A home. Resources. You mean money, I replied. I mean opportunity, she corrected. I glanced at her in the mirror. Her mouth tightened. The way it did when she was used to being agreed with. You think driving a taxi means I'm failing, I said. Not a question. She hesitated, just long enough. I think you're overwhelmed, she said carefully. And pride can hurt children. There it was. The polite version of, you're not enough. I nodded once. You're right about one thing. What's that? she asked. Lily deserves opportunity, I said, which is why I won't let you turn her into a justification. Her face flushed. That's not fair. No, I agreed. It's accurate. She crossed her arms. Daniel and I are married now. We're building a family. You're building on someone else's timeline, I said. She leaned forward. You don't understand what it's like to plan at this level. I almost smiled. Do you know how many people get into my car every week and talk about plans? I asked. About trusts, contracts, acquisitions, exits? She looked at me sharply. Are you implying something? I'm implying you talk freely, I said. And so do your parents. Her breath caught. Are you recording this? She demanded. No, I replied. I don't need to. She leaned back, eyes narrowed. This is beneath you. I parked in front of the address she'd entered. A large house, stone exterior, warm lights. This, I said calmly, is exactly where you think I belong. She opened the door, then paused. You could have had this life, she said, if you'd chosen differently. I met her eyes in the mirror. I chose truth, I said. You chose insulation. She slammed the door. I drove away without checking the rating. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because I was angry, because pieces were aligning. Over the next 2 weeks, the situation escalated without anyone raising their voice. Naomi Turner filed a motion for full financial disclosure. Daniel's attorney pushed back, citing privacy. The judge denied it within days. Trust documents were requested. The Collins family responded with delays. Elaine Collins called again, this time in the afternoon. You're creating unnecessary conflict, she said. You're funding it, I replied. She exhaled sharply. What do you want? I want my daughter protected, I said. And I want the truth on record. Elaine's voice cooled. Be careful. I am, I said. That's the problem. The court ordered temporary child support adjustments based on imputed income. Daniel's payments increased. Not enough to change my life, enough to change his. That was when the pressure shifted. Daniel started showing up more, calling, leaving messages about cooperation and healing. Megan stopped calling entirely. Richard Collins's name appeared again in my ride requests, twice. I declined both. I didn't need more confirmation. What I needed was timing. Taxi driving gave me access, but it also gave me something else. Witnesses. One evening, I picked up a woman named Sandra Lopez from a private clinic. Mid-50s, tired eyes. She got into the back seat and immediately began talking on her phone. No, Richard, she said. You can't retroactively change the beneficiary. I slowed slightly. Yes, I understand the trust structure, Sandra continued. But if funds are being used to avoid support obligations, the court will look through it, she sighed. No, I won't falsify that. She hung up and noticed me watching the road too carefully. Long day, she said. Always, I replied. She smiled faintly. I work in family law, I nodded. I've learned more about it this year than I ever wanted. She studied my reflection. That usually means someone underestimated you. Yes, I said. She handed me her card before getting out. Just in case, she said. I didn't call her. I forwarded the card to Naomi. By early May, the Collins family strategy changed. They stopped pushing. They started settling. An offer came through Daniel's attorney. Increased support, back payments, no custody interference, no school contact. In exchange, they wanted one thing: silence. Naomi looked at me across the table. You don't have to accept this, she said, but it's significant. I read the numbers, calculated, thought about Lily's future. Then I thought about Megan standing in my back seat, telling me I could have had her life. I shook my head. I don't want silence, I said. I want boundaries. Naomi nodded. Then we counter. The counteroffer was simple: full compliance, no trust shielding, written acknowledgement of parental responsibility. And one more thing. A court order barring Megan Collins from contacting Lily or her school. When the response came, it was immediate. Daniel called. His voice cracked. You're ruining everything, he said. No, I replied. I'm ending it. You're punishing Megan, he said. She involved herself, I replied. She loves Lily, he insisted. She doesn't know her, I said. And she never will. He went quiet. That silence told me everything. The judge scheduled a hearing, not for custody, for financial accountability. And for the first time, the Collins family would have to answer questions under oath. I hung up the phone and looked at Lily drawing on the floor, tongue between her teeth in concentration. She looked up and smiled at me. "Mommy," she said, "can we go to the zoo this weekend?" "Yes," I said, "we can." Because no matter how this ended, one thing was already clear. They thought this was a fight. It wasn't. It was a correction. And corrections, once started, don't ask permission to finish. The hearing date appeared on my calendar that night, and with it, the quiet certainty that the story they'd written without me was about to be read aloud, in a room where money didn't get to interrupt. The week before the hearing moved slowly, like the city was holding its breath. I kept driving. Early mornings, late nights, airport runs, office parks, private neighborhoods where gates opened automatically for people who never had to wait. I listened more than I spoke. I wrote nothing down while passengers were in the car. I didn't need to. The patterns had already burned themselves in. Every conversation sounded the same once you heard it enough times. Assumptions, certainty, immunity. Daniel stopped calling after Naomi sent the counteroffer. Instead, his attorney sent short, clipped emails, clarifications, requests, attempts to narrow scope. They wanted to keep the hearing small, contained. The judge, according to Naomi, did not like containment. On Tuesday afternoon, as I waited outside Lily's school, a black SUV pulled up across the street. I recognized it immediately. Megan's parents' car. I'd seen it before, parked behind the church. Elaine Collins stepped out. She crossed the street without hesitation, heels clicking, posture straight. She smiled when she reached me, the kind of smile meant to calm situations she usually controlled. "Claire," she said, "do you have a moment?" "I'm waiting for my daughter," I replied. "So am I," she said smoothly. "In a way." I didn't invite her to sit. "I want to be very clear," Elaine continued. "No one is trying to take Lily from you. That's not how your daughter framed it to the school," I said. Elaine's smile tightened. Megan was concerned. "She had no right," I said. Elaine nodded slowly, as if conceding a minor point. That may have been an overstep. Emotions were high. "Emotions didn't make her call a principal," I replied. "Entitlement did." Her eyes sharpened. "Be careful with your language." I met her gaze. "Be careful with your access." We stood there in silence until the bell rang and children poured out of the building. Lily spotted me immediately and ran over, backpack bouncing. "Mommy!" she said, throwing her arms around my waist. Elaine watched closely. Too closely. "This is Lily," she said, kneeling slightly. "I'm Megan's mother." Lily looked up at me. I placed a hand on her shoulder. "You don't need to talk to strangers," I said gently. Elaine straightened, color rising in her cheeks. "Claire," she said quietly, "you're making this adversarial." "You made it invasive," I replied. She exhaled, controlled again. "Let's talk like adults." "We are," I said. "Adults use courts when boundaries are ignored." I took Lily's hand and walked away. That night, Naomi called. "They're nervous," she said. Elaine reached out to the court clerk. "That's not subtle." "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means the hearing will not be postponed," Naomi replied, "and it will not be gentle." The hearing took place on a Thursday morning in Multnomah County Family Court. Courtroom 4B. Beige walls, hard benches, no drama in the architecture, just function. Daniel arrived with his attorney and Megan beside him. She wore a cream-colored suit, hair immaculate. Richard and Elaine sat behind them, faces composed. I sat alone with Naomi. No support team. No armor. Just facts. The judge, a woman named Honorable Patricia Keegan, entered without ceremony. She reviewed the file quietly, flipping pages, making notes. "Mr. Brooks," she began, "you are currently in arrears for child support in the amount of $14,800. Daniel shifted. His attorney began to speak. Judge Keegan raised a hand. "I will hear from you shortly." She turned to Naomi. "Ms. Turner, your motion includes third-party financial involvement. Please explain." Naomi stood, calm, clear. "Your Honor," she said, "Mr. Brooks's lifestyle and expenses are being materially supported by a family trust, controlled by his in-laws, the Collins family. We believe this support is being used to shield income and avoid child support obligations." The room stilled. Daniel's attorney objected. The judge overruled. Richard Collins leaned forward slightly, jaw tightening. Naomi continued. We have email correspondence, trust documentation, and witness statements indicating that Mr. Brooks's financial stability is contingent upon this support. Judge Keegan looked directly at Daniel. Is that correct? Daniel hesitated. Just long enough. Yes, he said. Temporarily. Temporarily, the judge repeated. How long has this arrangement been in place? Daniel glanced at Megan, at her parents. Since before the separation, he said quietly. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Judge Keegan's expression didn't change. So while claiming instability, you were supported. Yes, he said. And during this time, she continued, you failed to meet your obligations to your child. Daniel swallowed. Yes. The judge nodded once. Then she turned her attention to Megan. Mrs. Brooks, she said, you were not a party to this case. However, your involvement with the child's school raises concerns. Megan stood. I was only trying to help. Megan sat. Elaine's composure cracked for the first time. The judge issued orders swiftly. Immediate repayment plan. Wage imputation including trust support. Written prohibition of third-party interference. Megan Collins was named explicitly. The Collins family did not speak. They didn't need to. The judgment spoke for them. Outside the courtroom, Daniel tried to approach me. His attorney stopped him. Megan didn't look at me at all. Elaine did. Her eyes held something new, not anger. Calculation recalibrating. Naomi squeezed my arm. You did well. I nodded. On the drive home, Lily asked if we could get ice cream. Yes, I said. We can. As she ate happily, ice cream dripping down her fingers, I watched her and felt the weight shift. Not lifted, placed where it belonged. That night, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. This isn't over. I stared at the screen for a moment, then deleted it. They were right about one thing. This wasn't over, but it was no longer theirs to control. And the next move wouldn't come from anger or exposure. It would come from consequence. Quiet. Legal. Permanent. Because once the truth enters the record, it doesn't leave. And neither do the people it protects. The morning after the hearing, I woke up before my alarm. Not because I was anxious, because my body had finally stopped bracing. There's a difference between relief and release. Relief feels like air returning to a room. Release feels like realizing you were holding the door shut yourself, and you can let go. I packed Lily's lunch, braided her hair, walked her to school. Everything ordinary, except it wasn't. The world hadn't changed. What the rules governing it had. Daniel paid his first adjusted child support installment 3 days later. On time. The exact amount ordered. No note attached. That silence told me more than any apology could have. At work, driving felt different too. Not easier. Sharper. I noticed routes more clearly. Traffic patterns. The ways certain neighborhoods breathed at certain hours. On Thursday afternoon, I picked up a woman named Trina Wallace near South Waterfront. Early 40s, crisp blazer, phone pressed to her ear. I don't care how insulated they think they are, she said. Once a trust touches family court, everything gets messy. I glanced at the mirror. Yes, Trina continued. Especially when the trust supports someone dodging obligations. She ended the call and noticed my expression. Sorry, she said. Work talk. What do you do? I asked. I audit nonprofit and family foundation compliance, she replied. People think money with good intentions doesn't need oversight. She smiled thinly. It always does. She handed me a card when we arrived. Just in case, she said. That was the second card in a week. I didn't call her either. But I noticed something. The world had started offering me resources I didn't ask for. Because I'd stopped broadcasting vulnerability. At home, the mail changed tone. Official letters replaced suggestions. Court notices replaced threats. A revised parenting schedule arrived through Daniel's attorney. More structured, less flexible, less power for him. He didn't argue it. Megan disappeared completely. No calls, no messages. No more quiet inquiries through third parties. Rachel, my younger sister, called that Sunday. She lived in Eugene and had stayed carefully neutral through the divorce. I heard about the hearing, she said. Mom told me. And? I asked. She said you were calm, Rachel replied. That scared her. I almost laughed. What else did she say? I asked. That Daniel's new family isn't as untouchable as they thought, Rachel said. and that maybe they underestimated you. Maybe. That word people use when they can't admit certainty yet. 2 weeks later, I received a formal notice in the mail. A petition filed by Daniel Brooks, requesting mediation regarding custody modification. Naomi reviewed it and sighed. They're trying a different angle, she said. He wants to look cooperative. What does he want changed? I asked. Overnights, she replied. More time. Joint decision-making. I considered it. Not emotionally. Logistically. Does he have space? I asked. Naomi raised an eyebrow. Not independently. Then no, I said. We filed a response within 48 hours. Clear, firm, supported by facts. Daniel didn't contest it. He withdrew the petition a week later. That was when the next shift happened. Not legal. Social. I started noticing familiar names popping up in my ride requests. People connected to the Collins family. Associates, contractors, distant relatives. They talked, less freely now, but enough slipped through. There were whispers of audits, of internal reviews, of delayed projects. Collins Construction had lost a bid, then another. Nothing dramatic, just friction. One night, while waiting for a fare near Lake Oswego, my phone buzzed. A message from Megan Collins. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. We need to talk. Not about court, about us. I didn't respond immediately. I waited until Lily was asleep, until the apartment was quiet, until my thoughts were steady. Then I replied with one sentence. There is no us. She responded almost instantly. You don't understand how much pressure I'm under. I stared at the words, then typed, neither did I, when you chose him. She didn't reply. The next morning, I dropped Lily off at school and found an envelope taped to my door. No postage. Hand delivered. Inside was a cashier's check. $10,000. No note. No explanation. I called Naomi. They're trying to settle privately, she said. Outside the court order. What do I do? Not deposit it, she said. Bring it to me. I did. She returned it with a formal letter attached. Any payments must follow court-approved channels. That afternoon, Elaine Collins called again. Her voice had changed. Less confident. Still controlled, but strained at the edges. This doesn't need to escalate, she said. It already did, I replied. You've made your point, she said. Daniel is paying. Megan has stepped back. My point wasn't punishment, I said. It was protection. She exhaled sharply. You're risking reputations. No, I said. I'm letting them meet reality. There was a pause. Then, quietly, what do you want? The question people ask when power shifts. I want you to stop trying to manage me, I said. And I want you to stop thinking money can undo decisions. Silence. Then the line went dead. That night, as I tucked Lily into bed, she asked a question that caught me off guard. Mommy, she said, why doesn't Daddy come over anymore? I chose my words carefully. Because adults sometimes make choices that change how they show up, I said. But that doesn't change how much you matter. She nodded, satisfied enough. After she fell asleep, I sat at the kitchen table and opened my notebook. I didn't write names this time. I wrote patterns. Control disguised as concern. Money used as erasure. Silence mistaken for weakness. Then I wrote one more sentence. I don't need to win. I need to finish. The next day, Naomi called with an update. There's been emotion, she said, from the Collins family. My stomach tightened slightly. About what? About the trust, she replied. They want to restructure. Distance Daniel from direct support. I smiled. Not because it was over, but because it was working. They were changing behavior, not out of growth, out of consequence. And consequence, once introduced, has a way of reshaping everything it touches. The final phase wasn't going to be loud. It was going to be administrative, which meant it would last. And that was the kind of ending I was building toward. One where Lily's life didn't depend on anyone's goodwill, only on systems that work. And a mother who no longer mistook silence for safety. The trust restructuring took longer than the Collins family expected. That was the problem with systems. Once you triggered them, they moved at their own pace. Naomi explained it to me over the phone one evening, while I sat on the floor helping Lily with a puzzle. They're trying to reroute funds so Daniel looks independent, she said. But courts don't care about cosmetic changes after the fact. So it won't work? I asked. It will work, she said carefully. Eventually. But not retroactively. and not without scrutiny. I listened, placing the final puzzle piece where Lily pointed. What kind of scrutiny? I asked. Naomi exhaled. The kind that asks why. Why had Daniel been supported before? Why payments stopped? Why third parties intervened? Why a trust designed for asset protection suddenly needed redesign? Questions make people nervous, especially people who aren't used to answering them. That week, Daniel showed up at Lily's school for the first time since the hearing. I wasn't there. Rosa called me. He waited outside the gate, she said. Didn't come in. Just stood there. What did Lily do? I asked. She waved, Rosa replied, then went back to playing. I closed my eyes briefly, not because it hurt, because it clarified. Later that night, Daniel called. I let it go to voicemail. Claire, he said, his voice lower than usual. I just want to see Lily more. This legal stuff is making everything harder. I listened once, then deleted it. The next morning, Naomi forwarded me a notice, a subpoena request. The Collins family was being asked to produce internal trust communications related to Daniel Brooks. Richard Collins was not pleased. That much was clear when I picked him up again by accident. Same location as before, same briefcase, same confident posture. This time, he recognized me. Pull over, he said sharply. I can't, I replied evenly. We're in traffic. He stared at me through the mirror. So this is deliberate, he said. What is? I asked. You, he said. Listening. Collecting. I'm driving, I replied. That's my job. You know exactly what you're doing, he said. Yes, I agreed. I do. He laughed, but it lacked humor. You think you're clever. I think I'm thorough, I said. You're going to damage people who didn't do anything to you, he said. I merged into another lane, smoothly. You financed someone who abandoned his child, I replied. That's not nothing. He leaned back, silent now. When we reached his destination, he didn't get out immediately. What do you want? He asked again. I already told your wife, I said. Stop interfering. Stop trying to manage outcomes. And if we don't? He asked. I met his eyes in the mirror. Then we all keep answering questions. He exited without another word. 2 days later, Megan tried again. She showed up at my apartment. I didn't open the door. Claire, she called softly. I know you're home. I stayed quiet. We were friends, she said. You owe me a conversation. I almost opened the door, not because she was right, because the old reflex was still there. Then Lily asked from the bedroom, Mommy, who's that? I didn't answer Megan. I answered Lily. No one you need to talk to, I said. Megan's voice hardened. You're turning her against me. I opened the door then, just enough. You don't exist in her life, I said calmly. You never did. Her face twisted. That's not fair. Neither was lying in my house and listening to my husband plan his exit, I said. She flinched. I loved him, she said. So did I replied. The difference is, I didn't build my future on someone else's collapse. She stared at me for a long moment. You think you won, she said. I think I finished, I replied. She left without another word. That night, I received an email from Naomi. The judge has ordered a full review of trust involvement during the separation period. I stared at the screen. Not satisfaction. Completion. The Collins family had tried to manage optics. What they triggered instead was a record. And records? Don't forget. The next phase wouldn't involve me at all. That was the most important part. Because real revenge isn't about staying in the story. It's about exiting it with the truth intact. As I turned off the light and lay beside Lily, listening to her steady breathing, I understood something final. They had underestimated the quiet. They thought silence meant surrender. But silence, when paired with memory and law, becomes something else entirely. It becomes leverage. And once leverage exists, control is no longer theirs. The next chapter wouldn't be about confrontation. It would be about consequences unfolding without my presence, which was exactly how I wanted it. By the time the audit became public, my name wasn't attached to it at all. That was intentional. Naomi had warned me early on that visibility cuts both ways. I didn't need credit. I needed distance. The less I appeared to benefit, the cleaner everything stayed. The notice came through an article buried on page 6 of a local business journal. Collins Construction to undergo internal review following compliance inquiry. No accusations, no conclusions, just scrutiny, the kind that never leaves quietly. I read it once, folded the paper, and put it away. Then I packed Lily's lunch. Life continued. Daniel's behavior shifted again. He became punctual, polite, almost careful. Messages were brief and neutral. He never mentioned Megan. He never mentioned money. The child support payments arrived on schedule. Every time. Consistency arrived the way it always does, when consequences make chaos expensive. I stayed out of it. Taxi driving remained my anchor. Familiar routes, predictable unpredictability. I knew which streets flooded when it rained, which neighborhoods tipped well on Sundays, which hours were worth the gas. One afternoon, I picked up a man named Harold Whitman near the waterfront. 70s, soft voice, neat handwriting when he signed the receipt. He didn't talk much at first. Then, halfway through the ride, he said, "I used to think control was leadership." I glanced in the mirror. "Used to?" I asked. "I ran a company for 40 years, he said. Thought if I held everything tightly enough, nothing would break." "What changed?" I asked. "My daughter," he said. "She stopped calling." He looked out the window. "Took me a long time to realize it wasn't because she was ungrateful," he continued. "It was because I never let her choose." I dropped him off at a quiet townhouse. He left a generous tip and said, "You seem like someone who learned early." I watched him walk away and thought about how often men said things like that to women driving them somewhere, as if survival were a personality trait. At home, Lily started sleeping through the night again. Her nightmares faded. She stopped asking if someone was coming to take her away. Children adjust faster than adults when stability replaces uncertainty. Rachel visited one Saturday. She brought groceries and sat at the kitchen table while Lily colored nearby. "You look different," she said. "Older?" I asked. "Centered," she replied. She hesitated, then added, "Mom is worried." "About what?" I asked. "That you won't forgive," Rachel said. I shrugged. "Forgiveness isn't a prerequisite for boundaries." She smiled faintly. "You always were better at definitions than emotions." That night, after they left, I opened my notebook again, not to write plans, to close loops. The trust audit progressed quietly. No dramatic leaks, just document requests, follow-ups, revisions. The Collins family responded the way powerful families always do. They complied, without admitting fault. Daniel stayed out of it. Publicly. Privately, he sent one message. I didn't know it would go this far. I stared at the screen, then typed, "You built it to go exactly this far." I didn't hear from him again. The next development came from an unexpected direction. A rideshare driver I recognized waved at me at a gas station late one night. Her name was Tanya Price. We'd exchanged nods before, shared bathrooms at rest stops, the quiet camaraderie of people who worked odd hours. "Hey," she said. "You ever think about dispatching?" I frowned. "What do you mean?" "My cousin runs a small fleet," she said. "Needs someone organized, knows routes, knows people." I considered it. Not because I was desperate, because options had started appearing. We exchanged numbers. 2 weeks later, I met her cousin, James Holloway, at a diner off Interstate Avenue. He was direct, practical, asked questions that mattered. "Why taxis?" he asked. "Because flexibility kept my daughter fed," I said. He nodded. "That'll do." He offered me part-time operation support, scheduling, driver coordination. No glamour, steady pay, daylight hours. I accepted. Not as an escape, as an expansion. The irony wasn't lost on me. For years, I'd been managing Daniel's life without authority. Now I was managing logistics with it. The Collins audit reached a conclusion in early fall. No public scandal, no headlines, but consequences still arrived. A contract wasn't renewed. A partnership quietly dissolved. A board seat changed hands. Nothing dramatic. Everything expensive. I heard about it the same way I'd heard about everything else. In the back seat. One evening, a man in a gray suit sighed into his phone. "Yes," he said. "They're restructuring leadership. Damage control." I dropped him off and drove on. Megan never contacted me again. I heard she'd stopped attending certain events, that she'd stepped down from a committee she once chaired. Social consequences don't announce themselves. They isolate. Daniel requested a meeting in November. In public. A cafe halfway between our places. I agreed. He looked thinner, less certain. "I just want to co-parent well," he said. "So do I replied. He nodded. I didn't expect everything to change this much. Everything didn't, I said. Just the parts built on ignoring reality. He studied me. "You're different," he said. "Yes," I replied. "I am." We discussed logistics, schedules, holidays, nothing emotional. When we stood to leave, he hesitated. "I'm sorry," he said. I believed he meant it. I also knew it didn't change anything. "I accept your apology," I said, "and I'm keeping my boundaries." He nodded and left. That night, Lily asked if Daddy could come to her birthday party. "Yes," I said, "if he wants to." That was the truth. I wasn't gatekeeping. I was guarding. The difference mattered. As winter approached, the last piece fell into place quietly. Naomi called. "The trust review is closed," she said. "No further action. But everything's documented." "Thank you," I said. "You should know," she added. "This record will follow them." "I know," I replied. When the call ended, I sat in the dark for a moment. No triumph, no relief, just steadiness. This wasn't about watching them fall. It was about ensuring they couldn't pretend nothing happened. And as I turned off the light, I realized something else. The story was no longer moving toward revenge. It was moving toward inheritance of a different kind. Not money, authority. And once you inherit that, you don't give it back. The next chapter wouldn't be about them reacting. It would be about me choosing. And that choice would change everything. Choice arrived quietly. It didn't look like a confrontation or a victory. It looked like a Tuesday morning, with 2 emails waiting in my inbox, and Lily asking if she could wear her favorite shoes, even though they didn't match. I said yes to the shoes. I stared at the emails longer. One was from James Holloway, confirming the fleet operations role could expand to full-time if I wanted it. Benefits, predictable hours, a desk with my name on it. The other was from Naomi. Daniel's attorney has requested a final settlement conference. This would close all outstanding matters permanently. Permanently. That word held weight. I made Lily breakfast, walked her to school, drove my first shift of the day without accepting a single ride, just letting the city move around me while I thought. For years, my life had been reactive, adjusting, absorbing, responding to other people's decisions as if they were weather. Now, for the first time, the next step was mine. I called James first. "I'll take the full-time role," I said. "Good," he replied. "You start Monday." Then I called Naomi. "Schedule the conference," I said. "I want it finished." The settlement conference took place in a small office near the courthouse. No judge, no audience. Just paperwork and people trying to preserve what they could. Daniel arrived alone. Megan did not come. That told me everything. He looked tired, not destroyed, just worn down by consequences he could no longer reroute. Naomi laid out the terms, finalized support, clear custody schedule, no future petitions without material change, no third-party involvement, ever. Daniel's attorney pushed back gently, suggested flexibility. Naomi didn't budge. Neither did I. "This isn't punishment," I said once, calmly. "It's closure." Daniel looked at me. Really looked. "You don't need anything else?" he asked. I shook my head. "I need peace," he signed. When it was done, Naomi slid the final document across the table. "This ends it," she said. I signed without hesitation. Outside, the air felt different. Not lighter. Clearer. I drove straight to Lily's school and picked her up early. "Surprise," I said. "Ice cream?" She grinned. Yes. We sat on a bench, her legs swinging, vanilla melting too fast. "Mommy," she said, mouth sticky, "are you happy now?" I considered the question. "I'm steady," I said. "That's better." She nodded, satisfied. That evening, I packed away the last box of documents Naomi had returned. Court orders, copies, records. I labeled the folder clearly and placed it in a cabinet I rarely opened. Not hidden. Stored. The new job started smoothly. Dispatching drivers, coordinating routes, solving small problems before they grew teeth. I was good at it. Not because I was ambitious, because I was attentive, James noticed. "You've got instincts," he said one afternoon. "You see what's coming." I smiled. I had a lot of practice. At night, after Lily slept, I found myself doing something new. Nothing. No rehearsing conversations. No preparing defenses, just quiet. News from the Collins family reached me less often now. When it did, it was distant, abstract, reduced to business notes and social shifts. Richard Collins retired earlier than planned. Elaine stepped back from several boards. Megan moved out of Lake Oswego. Not far, just away. Daniel stayed where he was. Smaller apartment, routine visits, polite exchanges. We became functional. That was the final irony. Everything they said, I couldn't provide. I did. In December, Lily's birthday came and went without incident. Daniel attended. Megan did not. No tension, no scenes. Just cake and balloons and a child who felt safe. Later that night, as I cleaned up wrapping paper, my phone buzzed. A message from a number I hadn't saved. You didn't destroy us. You just didn't save us. I didn't respond because that sentence was the truth. And truth doesn't need an answer. As winter settled in, I realized something quietly profound. Revenge wasn't the ending. It was the bridge. The real outcome was sovereignty. My time, my decisions, my child's future. Unnegotiated. The next chapter wouldn't be about closing doors. It would be about opening one I'd never considered walking through before. Not as someone escaping damage, but as someone choosing direction. And that choice would finally belong to me alone. The new year didn't arrive with fireworks or declarations. It arrived with a schedule. Monday through Friday, 8 to 4. Lily's school drop-off timed with my commute. A desk near the window at the fleet office. A whiteboard with routes, names, contingencies written in my handwriting. Order. I didn't realize how much my body craved it until it was mine. James Holloway trusted me quickly, not blindly, practically. If a driver was late, I adjusted. If a vehicle broke down, I rerouted. If a customer complained, I listened first. You don't panic, he said one afternoon, watching me handle a sudden cancellation. Most people do. I already used my panic years, I replied. That was the truth. In January, Daniel asked to swap weekends. I checked the calendar, considered Lily's routine. Said yes. No resentment. No power play. He looked surprised when he picked her up. Thank you, he said. For what? I asked. For being reasonable, he replied. I'm being consistent, I said. There's a difference. He nodded slowly, as if storing that away. Megan sent a message through Daniel 2 weeks later. A request. She wanted to send Lily a gift. I said no. Not angrily, not defensively, just no. Daniel didn't argue. Boundaries, once enforced, become ordinary. February brought a snowstorm that shut down half the city. Drivers called in, routes collapsed, phones rang non-stop. I stayed late. Coordinated rides for hospital staff. Paired four-wheel drive vehicles with emergency requests. Kept the operation running. James brought me coffee and said nothing. The next day, he called me into his office. I'm expanding, he said. Second location, Salem. I waited. I want you to oversee it, he continued. Build it right. I felt the weight of the offer settle in. When? I asked. Spring, he replied. I accepted without hesitation, not because I wanted more, because I could handle it. At home, Lily started asking questions about the future. Can we get a cat? She asked. Maybe, I said. Can we paint my room? She asked. Yes, I said. Can we stay here? She asked quietly one night. I knelt beside her bed. Yes, I said. This is home. She smiled and fell asleep. That mattered more than any contract. In March, Naomi called with one final update. Everything is finalized and archived, she said. Nothing pending. No hooks left. Thank you, I said. You did the work, she replied. I just filed. After the call, I sat at my desk and stared at the wall for a long moment. No next steps. No defense required. That was unfamiliar territory. Later that week, Rachel visited again. She watched me cook dinner, efficient and relaxed. You're not bracing anymore, she said. I don't need to, I replied. She hesitated. Mom asked if you'd come for Easter. I considered it. Maybe, I said, if it stays simple. Rachel smiled. I'll tell her. Daniel dropped Lily off that Sunday evening and lingered. You've changed, he said. Yes, I replied. For the better, he added, then stopped himself. I didn't respond, not because he was wrong, because his assessment no longer mattered. The Salem expansion planning began. Permits, staffing, training schedules. I drove down once a week, mapping routes, meeting vendors. One afternoon, while reviewing paperwork, I caught my reflection in the glass. Tired, focused, grounded, not hardened, defined. That word returned again. In April, Megan sent one last message, direct this time. I hope one day you understand. I never meant to hurt you. I read it twice, then deleted it. Intent doesn't erase impact, and explanations don't reopen closed doors. The fleet expanded smoothly. The new location launched without incident. Drivers respected me, not because I was loud, because I was clear. James raised my salary, added benefits, no ceremony. I updated my budget, opened a savings account labeled Lily, not symbolic, practical. One evening, after Lily fell asleep, I opened the drawer where I'd stored the wedding announcement Megan sent months ago. I held it for a moment, then I shredded it, not out of anger, out of completion. The past no longer needed evidence. In May, Daniel invited me to attend Lily's school conference together. We sat side by side, took notes, asked questions. Afterward, he said, "I'm glad we can do this." "So am I replied. And I meant it. Not because we were healed, but because we were functional. That was enough. As summer approached, I realized something quietly radical. My life no longer revolved around what they'd done. It revolved around what I was building. And the absence of chaos left room for something else. Choice without urgency. Direction without defense. The final chapter wouldn't be dramatic. It would be honest. Because the strongest revenge isn't collapse. It's continuity. And mine was finally uninterrupted. By June, I stopped thinking of my life as something I had escaped. It became something I was maintaining. That distinction mattered. Maintenance requires attention, not fear. It assumes the structure is sound and worth preserving. I paid bills on time. I planned meals a week ahead. I kept Lily's routine steady, even when my own energy dipped. Nothing dramatic, nothing fragile. At the fleet office, Salem was no longer the new location. It was operational. Drivers knew the routes, dispatch flowed. Problems arrived and left without leaving scars. James Holloway noticed the shift before I did. "You don't hover," he said one afternoon. "You trust systems." "I trust people with systems," I corrected. He smiled. "That's rarer." The compliment landed quietly. I didn't store it away like armor. I let it pass through. That was new too. Daniel stayed consistent. He showed up when scheduled. Paid without reminders, didn't ask for flexibility disguised as generosity. When Lily spent weekends with him, she returned calm, not overstimulated, not confused. That mattered. One Friday evening, Daniel asked if he could attend Lily's end-of-year recital with me instead of sitting separately. I thought about it, then said yes. We sat 2 rows apart, smiled when Lily waved from the stage, clapped when she sang off-key with confidence only children possess. Afterward, Daniel lingered by the door. "She's happy," he said. "Yes," I replied. "She is." He hesitated. "That's because of you." I met his eyes. "It's because of stability." He nodded. No argument. That was progress. Megan did not attend the recital. I wasn't surprised. I wasn't relieved either. She had removed herself from the equation, and that was the cleanest outcome available. My mother called more often. Short conversations. No probing. No rewrites. "How's work?" she asked. "Busy," I said. "How's Lily?" "Thriving." She paused. "I'm glad." So was I. One evening in late June, after Lily fell asleep, I sat on the balcony with a notebook. Not to plan, not to document, to reflect. I wrote one sentence. "I am no longer explaining myself to people who benefited from my confusion." Then I closed the notebook. At work, a small conflict tested me. A driver named Marcus disagreed with a route change, raised his voice, challenged my authority in front of others. The old reflex stirred. Smooth it over. Absorb. Redirect quietly. I didn't. "Marcus," I said calmly, "we'll discuss this after the shift." He scoffed. "We'll discuss it now," I said, privately. We did. I listened. He spoke. I acknowledged his concern, then explained the data behind the change. "This is not personal," I said. "It's operational." He nodded slowly. "Okay." The next day, he apologized. That was the difference between control and clarity. In July, Lily and I took a short trip to the coast. 2 nights, A small motel. Sand everywhere. She laughed without restraint. I watched her run toward the water and felt something settle deeply. Safety doesn't feel like excitement. It feels like absence of fear. On the drive home, she fell asleep in the back seat, sunburned and content. I turned the radio off and drove in silence. I thought about the woman I had been 18 months ago, driving strangers through rain, holding my breath, believing silence was the price of survival. I thought about how many people confuse endurance with virtue. Endurance is just response. Choice is action. In August, James offered me equity, not a gift, an invitation. "You've built something here," he said. "You should have a stake in it." I reviewed the documents, consulted an attorney, asked questions. Then I signed. Not because it felt symbolic, because it made sense. That night, I updated my budget again. Increased Lily's savings. Started one for myself. No rush, just structure. Daniel asked in late summer if Megan could attend Lily's birthday party in the future. I said no. He accepted it, without protest. That told me more than any apology ever had. Rachel visited again, bringing iced coffee and gossip from Eugene. "You seem finished," she said. "I am," I replied. "With them?" she asked. "With the version of myself that waited for permission," I said. She smiled. "That's my favorite you." As fall approached, the last trace of legal residue faded. No more mail, no more calls, just life. Ordinary. Intention. One evening, as I tucked Lily into bed, she asked, "Mommy, are we okay now?" "Yes," I said. "We are." She nodded and closed her eyes. I stayed there a moment longer, watching her breathe, feeling the quiet weight of responsibility and privilege. I didn't feel victorious. I felt accountable. That was better. The final chapter wouldn't be about resolution with others. It would be about the promise I kept to myself, the one that didn't involve proving anything, only continuing. And that continuation would be the clearest statement of all. The moment I realized I wasn't angry anymore came without ceremony. It happened on an ordinary Wednesday morning, standing in line at a coffee shop near the fleet office. Lily had a field trip that day. I'd packed her lunch the night before, labeled everything, double-checked the permission slip. My phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. "Running 5 minutes late. Traffic. Sorry." I read it once and put the phone back in my pocket. No spike, no irritation, no internal commentary, just information. That was when I knew the story had ended. Not because everything was perfect, but because my nervous system no longer treated his presence as a threat. Work moved forward steadily. Salem ran smoothly. Portland stayed stable. Drivers trusted the system. Clients stopped escalating small issues because they stopped happening. James Holloway didn't hover anymore. He let me run things. "You built something that holds," he said once. "That's rare." I nodded, because I know what it's like when it doesn't. In September, Lily started first grade. New backpack, missing front tooth. Confidence I didn't remember having at her age. On the first day, she turned around at the school gate and waved, like she wasn't worried about who would be there at pickup. I stood there longer than necessary. That was the real outcome. Not money, not court orders. Safety that extended beyond me. Daniel stayed consistent. Not exceptional, just present. That was enough. We didn't talk about the past anymore. We talked about schedules, school events, allergies, weather. Megan didn't appear again. Not at school events, not in messages, not through intermediaries. She had become what she should have been from the beginning. Absent. In October, Collins Construction sold a minority stake to an outside firm. Quietly. No announcement. I heard about it from a passenger who worked in commercial real estate. They needed liquidity, he said. Pressure from multiple angles. I nodded and drove on. It wasn't my concern. The system had already done its work. My life no longer revolved around reaction. It revolved around stewardship. One evening, after Lily fell asleep, I sat on the couch and opened the notebook I'd carried through everything. The pages were sparse now. No timelines, no names, just one entry, written months earlier. I will not beg for space in a story they erased me from. I closed the notebook and placed it on the shelf. It didn't need to be referenced again. In November, I took my first full week off work. No emergency calls, No coverage issues. James encouraged it.
"You've earned rest," he said.
Lily and I stayed home. Baked. Walked. Watched movies we'd already seen. Nothing extravagant. Presents instead of recovery. That was new. Thanksgiving came quietly. Daniel picked Lily up that morning, dropped her off in the evening with leftovers packed carefully. She had a good time, he said.
"I'm glad," I replied.
He hesitated, then said, "Thank you for everything you do." I nodded. Not forgiveness, acknowledgement. That was sufficient. December arrived with rain and lights strung across streets. Lily asked if Santa knew where we lived now. "Yes," I said. "He updates his records." She laughed. On the last day of the year, after Lily was asleep, I stood by the window and watched fireworks in the distance. I thought about the version of myself driving strangers through the city, absorbing their conversations, learning without realizing she was being trained. I thought about the moment Daniel stepped into my taxi and said my name like a test. I thought about Megan's voice, Elaine's warnings, Richard's confidence. All of it had depended on one assumption, that I would stay small. That assumption cost them more than they ever expected. Not because I attacked, because I stopped cooperating. I didn't destroy their lives. I simply withdrew my silence. And silence, once gone, cannot be reclaimed by money or power. As the clock turned, I didn't make resolutions. I didn't need to. I had already chosen. If you're listening to this and you recognize yourself in it, if you've ever been dismissed because your labor didn't come with a title, if you've ever been told stability mattered more than dignity, hear this clearly. You are not invisible. You are unrecorded, and records can be created. You don't need rage. You need clarity, timing, and the courage to stop explaining yourself to people who benefit from misunderstanding you. If this story resonated with you, leave a comment and share what part stayed with you. And if you want more real-life family drama stories about betrayal, karma, and quiet, controlled revenge, like the video and subscribe. Because sometimes the most powerful ending isn't when they fall. It's when you stand, uninterrupted.